Okay, let's get started. Today I'll be talking to you about open source software in Africa as well as in the West. My name is Ngazetungue Muheue. I hope everyone can pronounce my name. Who can pronounce this? The first name? Ngazetungue. That's how we strike when we are working on the documentation. We are non-English speaking people, and sometimes when you are using a documentation, it's not like accommodating other people who don't speak English. We strike it like that. I'm a software engineer. I'm a digital content manager for a company in Japan. I do a remote job, but I'm based in Namibia. I involved in open source software community and their event. I'm one of the co-founders of Python Namibia, Python Africa, and Django Africa, and I help to organize all these events. Yes, I'm from Namibia. Namibia is a small country in Africa, in Southern Africa, next to South Africa, Botswana, Angola, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Compare Namibia to Netherlands. Namibia is 20 times the size of Netherlands. See the map. Namibia is the world's second least densely populated country. Netherlands is one of the most densely populated. Namibia is full of the deserts, and Netherlands is full of water. Netherlands has a very complicated borders because of its European neighbors. Namibia has a very straight borders, also because of Europeans. Because they were trying to divide the cake among themselves, you know. Today we are talking about Ubuntu. What I thought when I heard about this operating system called Ubuntu. In Africa, if you are from Bantu-speaking community, you'll be able to understand the word Ubuntu. No one need to explain this to you. Omuntu, like a person is a person. What Ubuntu means to me, a person is a person, whether you are from the West, from Africa, from the East or South or North. Ubuntu means I am because you are. In fact, the word Ubuntu is just part of the Zulu phrase, umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, which means that a person is a person through other people. Then our parents used to tell us, if your neighbor kids doesn't have food, you need to help them. If someone is working on something, you need to help them to go forward because you can't succeed without other people. This is the same things happening in an open source community. If you have software and you doesn't want to involve other people, I don't think you're going to succeed on that because you need people to contribute to this software. Open source software is everywhere, the same open source software, but in different places. Like in Africa, we focused on the local problems. But in the West, they focused on the global problems. In Africa, we focused more in education, healthcare, agriculture, and others. But in the West, people focused on the career growth. High-profile technology projects. For example, here at the summit, there's a lot of tools, robots outside there, that if you go to African events, you barely see some of these things because we solve day-to-day or everyday problems. If I'm at the company or if I'm walking around and I see that people are striking even to register maybe students, I'll go out there, sit in my room, and solve these problems. That's our focus and motivations. Our community is very small. We are at the early stage. We are beginner, and we focused more on learning. We have a small event, a local user group compared to the West, where they have a large community. Look at this, like Ubuntu Summit. In Africa, sometimes you can't find an event of 2,000 people. Just a group of maybe 5 people sitting together trying to solve their problems. People, they are more professional here, but we are still beginner. That's our structures. Look at this. If you go to Bacon, US, if you go to Django in Europe, you'll find a lot of people. But this is a setup of Bacon, Namibia. Just a group of people comes together trying to achieve a goal, trying to participate or contribute to the open source community. That's how Bacon, Namibia look like. When it comes to a company that support us, we have only few companies participate into our project. Very limited. Sometimes you find the company supporting you this year, and it takes like 5 years to come back and support your event. But they use the same software that people are contributing to. But because they don't understand how did this software came into about. But there are some non-profit organizations like Django Software Foundation, Python Software Foundation that played a major role in Africa. But then on the West, you have a company like Canonical sponsoring your event for the next 10 years. You don't need to go to them. They come to you and say that we are going to sponsor you. But then, how do you expect the African open source community to grow if they don't have funding? How do you expect to have software from African if they don't have funds? Innovation and style. We focused on low cost. We focused on essential needs. The problems that I'm facing today is the one that I'm solving. That's how we deal with our problems. Like a solution for everyday challenges. But in the West, people, they believe more in doing experiment, coming up with advanced tools. They spend a lot of money doing research and all this. You have to be in Doctor Who. You have to wait for 5 years to do what? But for us, it's all about having problems, you solve it, you put it out there to the community, and we move forward. That's how we work. Here at Python Namibia 2023, we had someone from Zimbabwe called Ronald. Ronald taught us the story of how Python saved thousands of jobs at the Zimbabwean pharmaceutical factory, helping to identify the cause of overheating problems that threatened to cause the shutdown of the plant. And we had Festus Abiata demonstrated how Python and Django made it possible to automate time-consuming administrative operation in his department in the Ministry of Home Affairs in Namibia. That's what I'm saying, that sometimes when you are sitting in the office and you find out that there is these problems, we solve that problem that time. That's how we work in Africa. Skills and education. Skills often informally acquired. It's like you are in a group, you learn from your friend, and you get other skills throughout the journey. Education is a key focus, community focus, contributing we don't really contribute because we don't have that skills. In the West, education is kind of like a formal. People do computer science, do research, and many of them, they contribute and they learn this at the early stage. Sometimes you go to the university and then you, after maybe 4 years or 2 or 3 years, you are introduced to like open source project. But for us, after 4 years, again, it's like you are going to another university because you are not at the university, you don't introduced to open source software, or we don't know how to contribute to it. Imagine a person like me. I've been in this community for 9 years, but I haven't contributed to Ubuntu. But I just contribute through like organizing event, giving a talk and all this, but the software itself I haven't, because I don't have that skills. I was never taught that skill at the university. This is how our PyCon look like. We strongly focused on learners, high school learners, and that's Andrea from Canonica talking to high school students. And this is one of the best things that we have done so far, because some of us lost that opportunity of knowing how to contribute at the early stage. But now we realize that it's better to try to get high school students now, giving them these skills, and after 5 or 10 years, at least they are going to contribute to the open source community or software. Africa is huge. So are the differences inside Africa. There are major technological hubs. There are major technological hubs like Nigeria, East African countries, South Africa, with a focus for finance, telecommunication, data science, but not the reality for most African. In Namibia is very small. You can't find hubs that is in Nigeria, in Namibia. It's not such thing. As well as like even in Lesotho, Swaziland, and Botswana. But let's compare Namibia to Nigeria. There's only 3 million people who live in Namibia, with a tiny software industry. But in Nigeria, there's 210 million people with a regional technological hub. But Namibia and Nigeria are about the same physical size, but conditions are very different. With 218 million people who live in Nigeria, most of them, they don't work in the tech hubs. They face typical African challenges. Some of them who contributed to open source or who developed software, they don't have even funds to go forward with your software that they have created. Or even sometimes you have a software there sitting in your computer because no one is coming to you contributing to this software. These are some of the challenges that most of these countries face. We are all interested in open source software. What are the implications of this for African contributing to open source? That's just a question that I'm asking the audience. Do you know any African open source software contributor? Anyone from here? Who? Who? N? Okay. And you don't know this one? So strange. That's good. And From outside Africa, outside South Africa, whom do you know? Because we know Mark is from South Africa. From outside a technological hub, who work on African problems, who contribute to your project. Any African who contribute to your project here in Europe. No one, but Africa have 1.3 billion people. 70% of these people are under the age of 30, and these people are talented. Why can't you go to Africa and get some of these people, talk to some of these people? This is what I'm talking about. There are 1.3 billion Africans. What is their impact on open source software? Why don't we see them, even here? What can we do about it? This is a question even when you are attending Ubuntu Summit that you have to ask yourself. Just for example, this is the Ubuntu community. But we are saying that we have 1.3 billion Africans, but you only have one active Ubuntu community in Africa, which is in Nigeria. But Africa has 54 countries. What is happening here? Then something must be wrong within Ubuntu community. Open source software in Africa, we used Ubuntu a lot at university, work, high school, and within the community. It's well adopted. People, they love it, and we value it. But when it comes to contribution, we don't understand. It is not well understood. We don't know how to contribute. It's like you gave us a car, but you didn't give us a key. The skills are missing. Enabling African contribution, what do we need to do? There are different kinds of challenges. I want to talk to you personally. There are things that you can't do, and there are things that you can do. You can't solve infrastructure problems in Africa. You can't close the hardware gap, overcome economic inequality, change educational system. Those are responsibility of the government. We want you to attend African open source software event. Find out what we do, actively seek African participants, and speak to an African and understand their problems and help them to contribute to open source project. These are things that we are looking for, because other things you can't. We don't ask for funds, gift, hardware, resources, although we need support, although we need funds. But that's not what we are asking you for. We want more. We want your time, your attention, your presence at our events, because we need to understand how do you guys contribute to open source projects. You could also extend your hand when you see a new African participant, maybe participating at your event, or maybe you have a documentation there, they send a request, and you can try to extend your hand. Consider mentoring them, follow them maybe on social media, and also when you're writing your documentation, think about non-native speaker. People, they don't understand. the documentation is written in such a way that you need a dictionary to understand what is happening, trying to make it very simple for us to understand. There are different challenges, and like we know, we have seen some of these things, like when it comes to the Python community in Africa. This is a Python community in Africa. Look at, previously I showed you the Ubuntu community in Africa, but look at this. Python Software Foundation and Django Software Foundation, they involved in our event. They send people to attend our events. They help us with resources whenever we need them. They also recognize and award people who participated, who involve or contribute to the open source software community. That is where Python is growing fast in Africa. But in Ubuntu community, we involve, but still, there is no connection between the international community and the African community. Because even if I'm sitting here, if I want to start Ubuntu community in Namibia, I don't know who to contact. But sometime Python Software Foundation will be able to send me a message and say that, no, why can't you guys start a Python user group in Namibia? A person is a person, and you can't go far without another person. That's why we are talking about Ubuntu. For us as African, Ubuntu have different meaning. And we don't need our parents to learn this. The moment a person saying Ubuntu, we understand. It's all about at which context that this person is using this. Do you have any question? I managed to finish in time.
Muheue, you're a little bit unusual amongst people who work in software in Africa because you have traveled a lot outside Africa, mainly to Europe, but also to other parts of the world because of your open source work. What is the biggest lesson that you're able to take back home with you from these events about participation?
Every time when I'm attending events, there are two or three things that I'm always looking at. First, I look at the project that I find at the event. And remember yesterday I spoke to one person at the booth with the robots. And I was saying that at PyCon Namibia this year we had like those robots, those small devices like a Raspberry Pi. But if we can take your project and you come to PyCon Namibia or even PyCon Africa and you demonstrate some of these things, you motivate young people to start having interest in some of these software or application that you guys developing. That is one thing that I also learned is that we should try to encourage our people, also those ones who develop their system, to bring it forward to our event so that people can see what we are talking about with their own eyes. Instead of saying that, no, I develop a software, but this software is in a bank. Who go to the bank? Yeah, people, they need to see this at the event. I mean, that is one thing that I have learned from the West, is that whatever they are talking about, they always show you that I worked on this, not a theory of, yeah. And also, when it comes to, I don't know, how do people here manage to have sponsor? I think this is something that they should also help us to maybe to look at, because African struggle getting sponsor. Like for event, for you to host an event, it's a hassle. You need to beg someone. You need to talk to those people. You need to convince them. But here it's all about long-term investment. A company stay with you for 5 or 10 years. In Africa, there is no such thing.
Hi, Muheue. Thank you very much for this talk. As a fellow African, I was almost tearing up from it, because everything is true. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Okay, thank you.
And one question, I think I already asked you this yesterday, but apart from you, there's no one else from the African communities. What is the biggest challenge? Why is no one else here?
You know, when it comes to coming to Europe, it's not easy, depending on the country. Okay, if you are from Southern Africa, it's a bit different, because we have that strong economy. Sometimes when you go to embassy, people, they look at you differently compared to the people from the East and the West. That is one thing. The visa, people, they do apply, but they don't get opportunity. They always fail that visa process. Another thing is sometimes it's a funding. You are attending a conference and people are saying that you need to pay from your own pocket and they are going to refund you. Where will I get 200 US dollars if I don't have a job? Then if you are working, then you are lucky. Or if you are coming from the community with money, maybe they can give you money and you pay for it. Then when Canonical pay back, then you refund them. But you have to be trust. That is one of the challenges. And another challenge is that we have people who use Linux. If you talk to them, they will tell you that I use Linux for 20 or 15 years, but they don't know about Ubuntu Summit. It's like, that's why I'm saying that there's like there's no connection between the I don't know whether now is it Ubuntu and the community. Somewhere something is missing there, because people, they don't know about this conference. I think that is something that people who are in charge, they need to involve the community a lot into this, for people to understand about the whole conference.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thanks again for your talk. I was looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to know how things are in Africa. Recently, or maybe it was a year ago or so, there was the first Ubucon in Africa. Is that right?
You see, I don't know.
Okay. I got to know about that because that was featured in the Ubuntu sphere.
Yeah.
But what I was wanting to ask is there some place we could find out more about what is happening in Africa in open source? Because one of your appeals was that we would become more aware so that we might maybe attend or help out or whatever. Is there somewhere where we could find out what's happening in advance?
Yeah, what we do normally do, we have a Python, like when it comes to Python, Python community, we do have a Python website where we list different user group. And also the Python Software Foundation itself have like a page that lists down all the events, like all the events happening around the world. Which means sometimes we just go there and see that, okay, Africa, there's spike on Africa, and it's happening in this date. And that's one thing that I will tell you. And also we have a repo, like on GitHub, where we list down different open source community. Sometimes it's a matter of reaching out to them and see whether they have event in this month or next month or this. Yeah.
Could you give us a search?
I can do that.
Yes, thank you.
I can do that.
So you mentioned education and even high schools. Do you know if open source software is actually being taught in schools in Namibia, for example? Or is it something you have to find as a student?
Yeah, if you go to, okay, let me put it this way. Sometimes we use a software without knowing whether it's open source or not. Imagine at the university where I was, we had 4 labs. 2 of these labs was using Ubuntu. And inside this lab, there's like 40 computers. But for me, it was all about using my Python, developing my software, and going back to my room and done. Then many schools in Namibia, they use open source software, but without understanding whether it is an open source and how to contribute to this. That is why I'm saying sometimes if you have a software, you come to the event, you explain to people, for people to understand what is that software that you are talking about, it's all about. In Namibia, I can put it that way, we have open source software, but we don't have people who can contribute to that. We don't know how to contribute to it. It's something that we are using it. Even if it is broken, we don't know how to fix it. Yeah. But it's widely used.
Yeah. Okay. Let's give a great round of applause for Muheue. Thank you so much.
Yeah.